Hello and welcome everybody to a very special episode of the High Return Real Estate Show, the show for heavy hitters. And speaking of heavy hitters, my business partner Jack is not with us today. We are recording today. It is March. I normally wouldn't put out a date because typically the stuff that we do has a lot of timelessness to it. But today's episode is being recorded on March 26th, 2020, right in the peak of the frenzy of the coronavirus pandemic. And we've got a really, really amazing show. I've got a really successful gentleman on that I'm very excited to have this conversation with. And we are going to title this, How to Invest During a Crisis. So pretty appropriate. And obviously we're all learning some pretty difficult lessons right now. We're going to talk about some of that. And I will be back to introduce this gentleman, but you're in for a really, really exciting episode, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the High Return Real Estate Show, the podcast for heavy hitters. Two men, one mission. It's time to build your empire.
All right, welcome back everybody to the High Return Real Estate Show. And today I want to welcome a gentleman. I'm going to read his bio to you. This man named Daniel Ameduri. Did I get that right, Daniel?
You got it correct, sir.
Okay, Ameduri. So Daniel's a self-made multi-millionaire, a full-time skeptic, which I love because I'm a full-time skeptic of conventional thought, proud father of three, and he is the co-founder of Future Trends newsletter and futureminds.com with nearly 150,000 subscribers. So I need to take a page from you a little bit about list building too, because that's a pretty phenomenal number. And one of the most recognized online authority in investment ideas and economic advice. And he's been on all kinds of TV shows, ABC, World News Tonight, Russia Today TV. And Daniel correctly predicted the collapse of Lehman Brothers, AIG, and Washington Mutual on Vision Victory, the YouTube channel he launched in 2007, which now has more than 13 million views. So I know your typical conversation is called Don't Save for Retirement, which we're going to get into as well. But obviously we have some real timely stuff. But I want to just say welcome and thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thanks for having me on the show today.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we were just chatting a little bit before we hit the record button. And, obviously from a standpoint of coronavirus, guys like you and I are heavily invested in real estate. There are some things that really none of us saw coming. And I love for you to speak a little bit about what you had been doing and how your perspective has shifted as a result of this coronavirus situation that we're all in.
Going through 2008, the crisis, a lot of people, it was very healthy for us. It was in hindsight, it was a good thing. We for the last 12 years may have made money in real estate, but we've probably made money with a little more prudence, probably had a little more capital on hand, less leverage. And so going into this, I think that's why many investors are actually probably better positioned to go into a crisis. Now, one thing we always know, the crisis never is going to be exactly the same. So I knew there would be another crisis and I was being prudent. But it's funny, I had prepared for deflationary events, inflationary events, currency crisis, stock market crashes, real estate crashes. To be perfectly honest with you, I never considered a pandemic, which is interesting because now here we are. And we just got notified this morning that one of our tenants, the Cheesecake Factory of all things, is not going to be paying their rent. Now, of course, when I bought it, it was as good as gold. It was like, it wasn't like leasing something out to the IRS or the State Department, but still, it was a major business that thrives, that's always got to wait. It's a good business. And then of course, I would have never factored in that the government on multiple levels, federal and California, would outlaw foreclosures, outlaw evictions, temporary bans on those type of things. So that is one good thing in the sense that, both the mortgage holder and the renter can both just put a pause on this right now until we get back to work and back to business, which we don't know at this time in late March when that's going to happen. But certainly it's made me happy that I've already been very conservative and very cautious. I think the people who will be most endangered by this crisis are the people who probably became investing adults after 2009, because they probably have only experienced up in real estate and up in the stock market, which potentially could mean that they could be in for some serious losses here. And you can see that actually in the stock market where people are buying the dip. That's very typical when you come off in a long bull market. You've got a recency bias, so people are rushing in. And that's why bear market rallies are so violent. They go straight up because everybody feels like, oh my gosh, the new bull market's starting. Well, we're barely 3 weeks, 4 weeks into this. The bear market's not over because retail is still rushing in at every chance to buy the dip. So for the stock market, it's an entertainment for me, for anybody right now, just to watch this thing. I mean, we've got 3 million people, 3.3 million people who just had jobless claims, and that's because some of the states have had their servers crash. So we don't even know how much it truly will be. But here the stock market is rallying, it's almost disgusting when you think about it. I know the stock market is not the economy, but I mean, it's just not good. You know, you're just doing another one of these big bailouts, and you've got Wall Street rallying. And let's be real, they're going to send $1,200 checks to people in 3 weeks. I mean, this is bad. This is not good.
Yeah, it's not going to cut. I'm glad. By the way, just an asterisk. I'm glad you said that the stock market is not the economy, because I think the stock market itself has done a very good of trying to make themselves think, or make people think that they're the economy, but it's not. And I start looking at some of these investors that have done well. I think the investors that are probably going to get hurt the most, at least in terms of real estate investing, are likely the ones that are over leveraged, because it really, that's one of the things that Jack, my business partner, and myself have always talked about. I mean, we're in less expensive properties and more simpler, smaller residential properties. But, you get on some of these real estate forums and sort of less seasoned investors, and they want to be leveraged for everything. They want to put as little of their own cash in as possible. And there's a lot of those guys and gals out there. I'm not trying to be sexist, but they're in a world of hurt right now. But the people that have been more conservative, and this has got nothing to do with Dodd-Frank or any of that other kind of stuff. It's just sort of more of, I mean, yes, that did fix some things after the 08 or 9 debacle, but the other people that have been less conservative are just in a world of hurt. I mean, if you've got, at least from a short-term standpoint, if you've got tenants that can't pay rent, how are you going to make good on your stuff? Now, even with a freeze in terms of, you getting some relief from paying your mortgage or your lender, and that, by the way, is only national lenders, but if you're dealing with a private lender, which many of investors do, they're under no obligation to give any relief at all. So, it's not they're not under the same government umbrella, let's just say. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. You spoke in terms of sending everybody a $1,200 check, and you compound that with obviously paying out billions of dollars in unemployment claims and all kinds of stuff. And as we sit right now, I don't know if today that the Dems and the Republicans have actually come to an agreement on a stimulus package. I don't follow too much mainstream news, but I think they did either last night or this morning. But either way, the number is just astronomical. I mean, we're talking somewhere, $3 to $4 trillion in terms of relief. And this is like 5% of the world's GNP. It's way more than 50% of the US GNP. So, the US doesn't have it. We're already, $27 trillion in debt. So obviously there's going to be quite a bit of quantitative easing, money printing, things like that. What do you see as the implications of all that? Like, how is that going to all shake out?
I think the populism movements that we've seen all over the world is going to, like, you just put gasoline on this fire, because you've got regular Americans and regular small businesses, your local Thai shop, Italian restaurant, your jiu-jitsu studios, your yoga schools, your mattress guy. These people are not getting bailed out, yet they've got to starve on no business for how many weeks and maybe even months. Yet the airlines and the Boeing, these guys are closed for 1 week and they need a bailout? I mean, what the hell's going on? I can survive for a year, few years, even with no income. Yet you're telling me the most successful companies on the planet, they can't go a week without a bailout? This is disgusting, honestly, what's happening. I think it's going to piss a lot of people off, whether you're Republican or Democrat. And we all know that when governments do these things, when they rush these things past, you know, there's all sorts of evil things in those bills, from, you know, how they're going to be restrictive on our rights, you know, to how we can even operate. And I'm speaking because no one knows what's in this bill. We really don't. The Senate voted on it last night. It passed 96-0. It'll go to the House now. And I guarantee you, it's another one of those 1,100 bills. It's like Obamacare or TARP or any of these things they do where they've got us in a crisis mode. Nobody knows what's in this damn thing. Yet somehow they were able to come up with 1,100 pages of this. So who knows what's really behind this, but it's very frustrating as an American to see this. We just did this 12 years ago. These companies, by the way, and it's going to be all over the news, they didn't need to spend their money on buying back their own shares. They could have had a cash reserve. You don't see Berkshire Hathaway or Apple looking for a bailout because they have a lot of cash. What's wrong with having a lot of cash? So when you do buybacks, you're simply enriching the executives. I understand there's buybacks can be a good thing if you have the savings to do it. But clearly these companies didn't have the savings if Southwest and these guys can't even go a few weeks without some business. But meanwhile, it is very frustrating that everyone else will have to. And then as far as these $1,200 checks, it's ridiculous. I mean, why even send them out? That's very small. I mean, I'm not for any kind of bailout, to be perfectly honest with you, but if you're going to do it, you could have said no to Boeing and no to Southwest and no to everyone else, these major corporations, and given $10,000 to each American. And by the way, the capital markets have a way for these companies to bail themselves out. They could do a financing. They could do a debt offering. They can liquidate some assets. I mean, there are many, many ways for these companies, and the government could have perhaps, rather than bailed out the companies, they could have bailed out the employees. I mean, there were just so many better ways to do this if you're going to do it. Again, I don't like any of it, but it's just disgusting the way they're doing it. By the way, we can't blame Trump. We can't blame Schumer. We can't blame anybody because it went 96-0. And the only reason there was 4 of them that didn't vote is because they couldn't go because they're in isolation. Otherwise, it would have been 100-0. So this is our government. This is what happens. So what's going on behind the scenes? It's hard to say. But one thing, it feels like a bit of an overreaction. I don't have a medical background, but I'm blown away by this. As many people listen to this, how is it possible that a few hundred people have to go into ICUs in New York or California or Washington, and it freezes up the whole healthcare system? Are you telling me our healthcare system was that weak, that we didn't have masks for people? We didn't have ventilators? I mean, it all seems just very disturbing. There's on so many levels. And of course, it's very sad. I have deep, deep sadness as everybody listening to this for all these business owners and employees and the children. Think about a high school kid that's a senior. They're not going to graduate. They're not going to do prom. Think about all the kids that are missing. They're going to get aged out of their last year of baseball, their last year of cheerleading. I mean, this is very frustrating. Meanwhile, the goddamn stock market is rallying 20% in the last 3 days while America is suffering. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, I obviously share your frustration. I don't know enough about the bill to speak to whether I'm agreeing with you or arguing with you. I guess I may have looked at it slightly differently in terms of, the hard line about just bailing out the big companies and not individuals. Because I guess under the assumption that some stimulus package is going to help a lot of small businesses. Like, we operate a turnkey company. And there's no question our business has slowed down quite a bit. But, we'll survive. We'll figure it out. I mean, we've weathered plenty of storms in a 4-year history. And, we just look at this as a bad storm. And so it's going to be interesting to see. But you're right. I mean, the amazing thing is 86-0. It's like, how is it possible that for the first time ever remember that Republicans and Democrats are all on the same page? And
unfortunately, the last time was the Iraq War.
It's
not good when they work together.
Yeah, no, it's almost better when they're arguing. Yeah. So, but I don't know. I have so many things to say. It's like my brain is almost on fry right now. And I feel like there is something bigger going on. Like, granted, like we talked about, both of us being people that are not necessarily conventional thinkers. I mean, we're both entrepreneurs. That's a smaller percentage of the population to begin with. And, when I say that I'm going to say, and this is going to go out there, recorded and be out there for posterity, I'm either going to look great, we're both going to look great, or we're going to look like complete assholes and idiots, right? So I feel like things do not add up. There's no reason that an entire world should be shut down over a serious virus. I understand. We've been through viruses before. There is something much bigger at play going on here. I feel like the virus itself is a very, very large distraction from what we haven't seen yet. You look at the way that basically our system works, the Federal Reserve and the corruption that goes on behind the scenes. And, you speak to, why are the bigger companies getting the bailouts? Well, there's a lot of corruption. A lot of those big executives have very, very deep pockets and very, very strong connections in Washington and other places around the world. And so situation for many years that these sort of power brokers, Federal Reserve, a private bank, this is not owned by Americans. It's owned by, a very small amount of individuals. And we think we're free, but we're not. And all this other stuff, loss of civil liberties and forced vaccinations and, all the kind of stuff that comes across are just further elements of control. And anytime a crisis happens, it creates a vacuum into which many more of these controls can be introduced. We know that historically, it's very obvious. Even the people that have the blinders on and are buying into sort of mainstream stuff, they even recognize that. So I'm not a prophet. I'm just saying, I think much of this is contrived. There's something much bigger at play. And we're either seeing, it's one or the other. Either we're seeing a move towards complete control by the assholes that have been controlling us, or there's enough of a groundswell underneath with some of the powers that be that have just had enough, and maybe this is just enough of a shakedown of the world's economy to unseat these old ways of doing things and to allow the average human being or certainly the average American, to regain some of those freedoms after all this shakes out. Now, I'm hoping and praying that it's the latter, but my point being is that there's something much, much bigger going on. And I don't know if you agree or disagree with that. I'm sorry for that whole long rant there, but that's kind of what I'm feeling.
It's of course I don't know what's going on as far as there's so much uncertainty on this virus. Is it real? Is it not real? Is it we know it's real. Is it as dangerous as it potentially could be, or is this masking something else? If you compare it to like auto accidents or the normal flu, which I know it's not the normal flu, but as far as what if we we had 1,000 people last week die of the flu. What if we treated every death like a breaking news story, like they're treating the coronavirus? Or could you imagine if they treated every auto accident like that? My goodness, I think the numbers are off the charts for the auto accidents. And people would be scared to go in their cars, thinking that every time you went into a car, you were going to die. The economy was fairly inflated, and the stock market was fairly inflated. And, this is another bailout here of Wall Street, and we'll see. And what's interesting though is all these people who have been calling the president Hitler for the past 4 years are now saying they want him to enact martial law nationwide.
Yeah,
and being resistive. And it's interesting because I've never seen such a demand from so many politicians that they want a nationalization of the guard and troops in our streets. And the president is being resistive to that. And I have to commend him for that, because I think if you did that, there's no going back from that. And it would create panic and chaos. And if you think we're panicked now, buying groceries and stuff, could you imagine if there were tanks rolling down our street? We would break the system. So good on him for resisting doing martial law or getting National Guard and all. Now you may need the National Guard in Los Angeles and New York City. I get that, but you do something like that on the national level, it's no going back from that. And thank God he has been resisted, because man, is there a lot of pressure from the media of all people. The media, we're supposed to have a free press, a libertarian type, fight the government no matter who's in there type media. And here the media is begging somebody who they call a dictator to be a dictator. I mean, this is just, there's a lot of weird forces at play here, and you're just watching it publicly. And if you just like let go of the politics side of it and just observe, it is stunning and it is shocking how the media is treating this entire crisis. It's disgusting, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, and they're obviously throwing just fuel on everything, and they're very good at being sensational, and this is obviously the most sensationalized story in our lifetime. But yeah, it's Trump has always said that there's no such thing as accurate reporting in America. That's been more evident in his administration than ever. And I'm not necessarily a Trump fan. I'm actually probably more libertarian than anything else. And I'm not a big fan of the Democrats, and I'm not really a big fan of the Republicans, because I feel like, both sides are a little bit too extreme. So, and there's too much bullshit and hatred and, non-compromise from the right to the left. But I think much of that is there's really a lot of, the reason that our media is this way is the same reason why we have a very chemicalized healthcare system. And there's all the natural things are suppressed, is because it's all about profits and who's writing the stories and who's actually creating the news. So warning, another rant coming up, but we are, just as an example, I know we're kind of getting off topic, but it's just the way it is. We are one of 2 countries in the world where it's legal for the pharmaceutical industry to advertise direct to consumer. The other country happens to be very small and is nowhere near the scale of the United States. So then you start looking at all the different media across the platforms that they can advertise on: television, radio, internet, whatever. They are approaching, either directly or indirectly, being responsible for 70%. They're almost at that of the entire ad spend across every platform. So it doesn't really take a genius to figure out, okay, well, let's see, I own an advertising platform and 70% of my revenue is coming from this particular industry. What am I going to write about? What am I going to make look good? I I believe that because I follow a lot of natural health circles. So the last 3 years, there's been a significant change in Google search and Facebook stuff in terms of censorship of natural health stuff. I've put up stuff on my own Facebook page that all of a sudden gets saying like this does not comply with our whatever. Like they're basically telling me it's fake news. Well, I know it's not fake news, but because I've looked at the studies and seen the studies. It's just not the fully endorsed studies, that went through FDA or CDC or whatever. So, and it's all, kind of pushed off and labeled as fake science. And, look, good nutrition and healthy lifestyles is not fake science. These are things that have proven to be very effective for thousands of years. You look at Ayurveda and how long that's been around. I mean, look at Chinese medicine. It's been around for thousands of years. This is not like just new age stuff.
Yeah.
But there's a lot going on in terms of, controlling the masses for the sake of keeping them asleep, for the sake of making human beings little profit centers. That's really the big picture of what this all is. And so, like I said, I hope and pray that this is an opportunity for human beings in general. I think it starts with America, but human beings in general to get back their life and to wake up and to see, like, do you want to just be a pawn in the game? I know I don't. I know guys like you don't. I mean, we're entrepreneurs. We're already, moving away from mainstream type stuff anyway. But the reason I'm talking about all this is because I feel like it's our obligation to wake up our fellow human beings to what's going on. And this is this kind of situation is what gets people to open up to this sort of conversation.
I agree. And it was the trend. I have a great testimonial for everybody. I have severe arthritis in my knees. And 2.5 years ago, I got an MRI and they're like, look, you'll need to get a knee replacement in your right knee within the next 5 years. You'll need to do cortisone shots starting immediately and then every 6 weeks. And they said, start taking, I think it was Advil or aspirin, one of them every day. And anyway, I went home. I'm not a person who does any kind of drug. Even when I had the knee surgeries originally, like 15 years ago, I never took any of the prescriptions they gave me. And I went home and Googled the heck out of natural remedies for arthritis. And there was a lot of common denominators. I started taking these things. And within a week, I was feeling so good that I had to call the doctor and say, I'm not coming in for that cortisone shot. And I didn't even tell them the truth, to be honest with you. I felt bad. I started taking the aspirin and felt great. I told my neighbor who was 63, who had a knee replacement, he starts taking the same mix and it was great. And it was very simple stuff. It wasn't complicating. I was taking frankincense, which is like buzzwally. I basically overwhelmed the body with anti-inflammatory things like turmeric and ginger and white willow bark. And then I took away all the inflammation foods. I took away all white sugars, all white breads, all white rice, refined carbs. So basically exterminated everything that causes inflammation and then overwhelmed my life with things that are anti-inflammatory. And I'm happy to report about 6 months ago, I actually started running again. So I've gone from barely being able to get out of bed in the morning, it took about 20 minutes to get the knees going, to doctors telling me I need a knee replacement and cortisone shots, to I'm running again. And I just simply take my daily regimen of these Chinese, remedies of natural herbs and spices, combined with just avoiding white sugar, and I feel great.
Well, wow. So you really hit home. So you're talking to a guy who's had a complete knee replacement. So unfortunately, I didn't get as deep as you did. Like I removed some of the, pretty much all the inflammatory foods, took some supplements, but probably was not as aggressive. And I had already had 2 other previous knee surgeries and a back surgery at that time. And have a really weird form of arthritis myself. and ended up having the full knee replacement. And I honestly feel like I never fully recovered. Like I wish I could go back to not having that fake stuff in there, because, you know, it's the old saying, you know, if you knew then what you know now. So after we hit the stop record button, I'm going to hit you up for your protocol.
I'll shoot you an email over it. I'm not at my new house right now, so I don't have, but I'll give you a whole list, because I've got a bunch of bottles there that my wife buys every month, and I take them every day. And right now during this coronavirus, I am beefing myself up and the kids. We're taking a higher level of vitamin C and higher units of D3 right now, just as a precaution.
As am I. Yes, for sure.
Make sure we're flexed.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like, you know, the irony to all this too is that we've been, you know, I think the whole life of tech and us all having phones and computers, and although we're super connected, has very much disconnected us in certain ways. And, you know, one of the fantastic things about being asked to stay home is that we have some quality time with our families and our loved ones, and we have connection time. And it's something that's been lacking for a very, very long time. And so I think there are ways to look at this as really quite a blessing. And so, you know, I don't know. I mean, I'm using the time to, like, I'm single and I live alone, but there are 2 or 3 people that I'm very close to, and I trust they're not going out, I'm not going out. We don't need to practice social distancing between the 2 or 3 of us. And it's really a chance for some fantastic connection. And so I think there's a lot of blessing in this. And, you know, for sure it makes us all stronger. But yeah, I definitely will take the email and all that. So we've been all over the map. Let me try to corral this conversation. We all know that there are real estate investors somewhere listening to this.
Yes, that's right.
At least as a you know, general demographic. And I granted, I'm kind of asking you now to be a prophet, and I know that nobody is a prophet, but what's your best guess? I mean, where do we go from here? What do you see in terms of, you know, upcoming stimulus, cheaper interest rates, printing money? You know, how is all this likely to play out? Where do you think, based on the lessons that you've learned through this, and we're still learning them, I get it, where do you think is the right place to be right now? What's the right kind of investing to be doing? What's the wrong kind? Well, what do you think?
Well, I think you first start off with reevaluating everything you already own. So perhaps if you have cash and you're happy, you've got some cash, you've got some real estate, maybe you've got some gold, those type of things, and then reevaluate. Remember, all your real estate, all your rentals are like little businesses. So let's make sure that these businesses are taken care of. I would get in front of it if you haven't already. Either reach out to the property manager, reach out to the tenants, and show them some compassion immediately. Let them know that you're interested in knowing how they're doing, because you want to help them get through this together. You do not want your tenants getting into a situation where they despise you. They've got no one else to blame, right? They're not going to work. They're having trouble paying for groceries, perhaps for their children, and they need someone to blame. They need somebody to be mad at. So don't be that guy. Be the Marriott, be the Hilton. Treat your customers, these tenants, the right way, the way you want your mom to be treated if she was renting a unit. So I've already done that. I've reached out to the tenants, let them know, hey, if you have problems, here's who to email. Let us know the situation, and we will work with you. You know, it sounds like an open invitation to default, but let's be real here. The government's already telling them they can default with nothing that we can do. So if that's your situation, it behooves you to even do it immediately and just let them know that, hey, look, I want to show you compassion. I want to help if there's something we can do. Now, if you have the means to do it, I would enact it. I would get in front of it. I would tell them, hey, look, we're doing a rent reduction of 25% for the next 2 months, for the next 90 days, whatever, if you have the means. Now, obviously, if you're not cash flowing and you're in a different situation, you could also look at refinancing your debt. As mortgage rates are dropping a bit, you could perhaps spread the loan out for 30 years. A lot of the banks are also being very helpful. Think about it. You call up Wells Fargo right now, or Chase and say, I need your help, they are going to respond right now. These businesses are in the same situation. This isn't like 2008 where a handful of us or a certain segment of the population was in crisis. Everyone is in this crisis right now. So consider calling your bank. If you're stressed out because of your next rental payment, or you've got 50 rental payment or mortgage payments for 50 rentals, call up those mortgage companies, let them know your situation and say, I need a 90-day break. I need a 90-day breathing period. What's the worst that can happen? It's like Cash for Keys in 2008. They used to knock on the foreclosure's door and say, I'll give you $1,000. And I was unfortunately in some of those, and I would like, I'll take $5,000. And they say, how about $3,500? Deal. So maybe you ask for 90 days and they only give you 30. But really start reevaluating and addressing the concerns you have right now, or try to get in front of it, because I don't think this crisis is going to end anytime soon, unfortunately, because even if we were able to open our businesses back up and get back to work, say in the middle of April, the rest of the world is all in different timelines. So if you look at Australia, just barely shut down yesterday. New Zealand shut down a few days ago. We didn't really start locking it down until, well, it's 2 weeks ago today. It was 2 weeks ago on Thursday, Disneyland closed. Trump the night before had shut the airlines down from Europe. And that's basically when this whole panic kind of really got surreal for all of us, right? I mean, let's be real. We're all waking up going, is this really happening? So yeah. I would look at those. And then on the opportunity side, start thinking about the type of investments that you can make right now, or perhaps be making within the next 90 days that you want to be ready for. So if you were interested in buying properties, you might want to start on properties where there's going to be a lot of distressed sellers. So not so much on the distressed property side, but distressed seller side, where you might be able to make very favorable terms, where it's a win-win. They want the hell out, and you want to capture that, take the property. So there might even be seller finance deals or loan assumptions that you might be able to negotiate in, where you don't have to go through the process of getting a bank. I've done nothing but seller finance deals for the last 12 years, excuse me. So look, it's all out there now. There's a lot of opportunities that are going to open up. If you've always dreamed of having a fourplex, but just didn't have the means, I guarantee you there's going to be some fourplex owners out there who are looking for somebody to help them and take over the situation. So really start to focus on the solutions for your own life. Turn off the TV, turn off the news, and just really start. Anytime you find yourself getting stuck like a deer in the headlights, or you find yourself getting fearful, just stop, start brainstorming, commit to writing 10 things down that you're grateful for, and then double it, maybe do 20 things. And then I want you to take that same state of mind and switch it right into 10 things that I can have solutions, 10 things that I can help people. Because when you start you're going to get momentum. And you're going to get momentum, and you're going to start to expose your brain and your subconscious to see things that you might not have been paying attention to. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, there's a property down the street they've been building. The builders had trouble. I bet you they would sell me that property for 10 cents on the dollar right now. So really start to just kind of stop following the news. We're not going to know what's going to happen. It is what it is. This thing will either last 4 weeks or 4 months. We don't know. But start really thinking every day, how am I going to position myself? Because to be perfectly honest with you, during depressions and economic winters, this is where you have your Walt Disneys are birthed. This is where your Apples are birthed. This is it. This is your opportunity right now to potentially have a game-changing wealth avalanche come into your life that will change legacy, will change generations right now. You can imagine when this is all said and done, I'm not going to try to pinpoint the bottom, but you're going to be able to structure deals and buy assets that will cash flow for the next 100 years.
Yeah, Daniel, I wanted to jump in so many times and go, yay, because I 100% agree with you. And I think it's, there's so much that you just said right there. So I just want to just sort of unpack that a little bit and say, look, first of all, thank you for that. Having a plan is way better than being in fear. Let's just start there, right? Just to say, okay, I'm just going to write down 10 things I can do. I'm just going to let my subconscious wander. I'm going to daydream. There's a perfect time to daydream and to say, like, what is just possible? Because right now, the way that mainstream media is working and the way that the crisis has us all locked up is we're more thinking about what are the things that we don't have? What are the things that are being taken away from us? So to be able to shift that perspective and shift the bandwidth and the energy of your mind and spirit into something that is, what kind of opportunities are going to be created here? How can I, reassess what I've got right now? How can I write stuff down? How can I, revisit my strategies? These are things that keep you busy with productive stuff. So I think that that's, absolutely fantastic. And, yes, we all need to be reevaluating. But yeah, I agree with you. There's a lot of things we don't know, but I think it's fair to say that we do know that things are never going to be the same. And we do know that, there was, I can't even remember, I think it was Paul Simon way back, 1980s, had a song, "One man's ceiling is another man's floor." All right. So as if to say, look, somebody may be in a very, very desperate situation. It doesn't mean that you necessarily are taking advantage of somebody, but if energy is correct, and to use your words, you are looking for solutions and looking for a way that you can win and the seller can win, you as the buyer, then that's a beautiful situation. Like your example with the fourplex, that's a beautiful situation. Somebody may really be wanting to get out of a situation, and it may not be exactly the way they want to get out of it, but you show up and go, hey, let's work together. Let's figure this out. Let's figure out some terms that may make sense for both of us. Then it's a fantastic thing. And I do think it needs to be said that the right energy for all of these kinds of deals is not going in with a taking advantage of kind of mindset. I feel like it's important for us right now as human beings, as humanity, and we're going through a very tough period, to be compassionate and to say, look, I understand you're in a tough spot. How can we work together? How can we make this a situation whereby it benefits us both, rather than I'm here to take advantage of you, And I like the same thing with the tenants. I like what you said. I don't know. I guess some part of me wants to play devil's advocate on that and say, some of the things that we see in the C-class markets are, tenants that are generally living hand to mouth anyway, and they look for any excuse not to pay their rent. So now they just have a, carte blanche not to pay. So that part is a little bit difficult to swallow. But look, there are just some things that are out of our control. And like you said, if you're leveraged and your tenants aren't paying, you can certainly be compassionate. If you already know they've got a hall pass to not pay legally, why does compassion hurt? It only helps. It only makes them be in a situation that once all this is over, they're going to be more willing to work with you.
Absolutely.
And same thing with your creditors. Yes, being able to call them and ask for help. And we've already done that in our company, and it's proven to be very successful. And so there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. And, everybody here is in a situation where we're going to have to learn how to get along with each other better anyway. So this is the perfect forum for doing that. So anyway, I'm rambling. I'm very, very appreciative of all of your insights. Is there I know we've kind of been all over the map with this, and I'm looking at the clock going like, oh my God, we've been talking for a long time here. Is there anything that you want to say, that maybe question that I didn't ask that I should have asked, things that we probably should have covered that we didn't?
Not really. I would just tell people that, over the past 3 or 4 weeks here, you've had a a realization of what your appetite is for risk, appetite is for leverage. I would take the time to write that down, not because you need to write it down or need to ever read it again, but a lot of times when you write something down, in my own experience, is it just helps you really remember this. So, because this ultimately is going to make you a better investor, it's going to make you a better business owner. And just always remember, this too shall pass. I was in Nagasaki over the summer. It's a beautiful city, one of the most thriving high-tech cities you'll ever go to. And 50, 60 years ago, obviously it was a disaster zone because it had an atom bomb dropped on it. You look at the United States went through the Great Depression, Germany went through hyperinflation and 2 world wars where the country literally bombed the hell out of it. So, I mean, this too shall pass. So just keep that in mind. If you're interested, you go to futuremoneytrends.com/virus. I'm going to start doing regular updates about every 3 days on the virus and on investments, and anything I ever do, I always share at Future Money Trends.
Awesome. So I was going to ask you for the link anyway, so I'm glad you put that out there. And Daniel, I want to say thank you on many levels. So thank you for just obviously being here and taking the time. I know you're also in the midst of a move, and it's a pretty topsy-turvy time to get people's attention, but thank you for your time and your attention. Thank you for just some really, really tremendous insights into what's going on. And, really thank you for your leadership during a very, very difficult period for all of us. So I'm grateful on many levels.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, brother. And that's a wrap. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, then tell everybody else about the High Return Real Estate Show, and we'll see you next time.